As record-breaking storms swept across Brazoria County, Texas in mid-2016, area local Randy Wagner gazed through the windows of his house. The merciless waters were rising and rising, eventually extending well over 2 feet, felling trees atop houses and causing major havoc. Would Wagner's home be flooded, destroying his valuables, or worse yet, harming loved ones? Wagner, a family man, lives in Rocherton in Texas, also known as Buttermilk Station. Its population is just 1,152, and it's seemingly tight-knit as far as communities go. It's the sort of locale in which everyone knows their neighbors and neighbors know everybody's business. A typical May or June in Brazoria, which sits on the Gulf Coast, sees temperatures average between 93 and 100 degrees with about 2 inches of rainfall. But this year's weather would prove a lot more dramatic. The month of May saw heavy flooding in the region, exposing road hollows and eroding huge portions of the street. Moreover, the Brazos River Authority went on to predict more storming, with floods set to reach even greater heights. Reports even suggested that the Brazos River could peak at 53.5 feet. Residents then were naturally on edge because of the news. Ahead of the next wave of storms, the idea of his loved ones having to be moved was heartbreaking, according to Wagner. There was probably nothing this resourceful man wouldn't have done to shield his home and brood from danger, even if it may have seemed insane to outsiders. Wagner had to do all he could to safeguard his hearth, so he got to work scouring the internet to find all the possible options available to him. There must be a solution out there with a cost which would be far lower than what he'd expect in anxiety and repairs if the flood hit and they were ill-prepared. Such was his thinking. He came across a device called an aqua dam, a 400-foot setup of tubes which are pumped with water and positioned around the home to envelop and protect it from rising floods, basically acting like a single enormous bag of sand. Water to protect against water? Could this really work? Well, Wagner thought it was worth a shot. It was clear that setting the plan in motion would involve toil and sweat, but it also required some travel. So Wagner drove to Louisiana to buy his aqua dam, and he then later put 2 of his pals to work on assisting and getting it rigged up. His neighbors, meanwhile, looked on in befuddled amusement as the giant snaking contraption began to take form. Apparently, the traditional sandbag method of staving off water was the protection of choice for many of them. I was the crazy guy. Everyone was kind of going by me, laughing at me, Wagner would tell Houston TV station KHOU. Still, while locals gawked at him like he'd finally lost the plot, Wagner persevered with his 2 workhorse buddies. Not knowing what the level was going to stop at, I needed to prepare for something that no one has seen, he recalled to KHOU. Within several hours then, they had pumped water into hundreds of feet of plastic material tubes extended to 30 inches in height. Who knew how this was going to work? In previous weeks, there have been talks of floods in the area, potentially reaching levels only seen during the flooding of 1957. Epic! Wagner's aqua dam, meanwhile, was allegedly capable of holding back 2 feet of water. He hoped and prayed that this promise and his house would hold up. As the rain began to fall then, it was now time for Wagner's crazy aqua dam to be put to the ultimate test. The homeowner initially looked on with his family in fear as the water started to reach higher and higher levels. Perhaps the aqua dam wasn't enough to hold back the raging forces of nature. Maybe even it would burst. As the storm continued to bash against the windows, anxiety would permeate the air. Unbeknownst to Wagner at the time, however, the waters were actually exceeding that 24-inch aqua dam guaranteed limit and had reached a startling 27-inch height. Within the greatest Rocherton community, however, neighbors and neighboring quarters weren't faring so well. In parts of the area, involuntary displacements were called. Military vehicles had to be dispatched to assist as the Brazoria River was waging its war against residents. The same residents who previously shook their heads and doubted Wagner's plan. After a rough spell, which saw trees battered and nerves frayed, the rain eventually eased up. But would the aqua dam save the day and a gumboot-clad Wagner emerge as heroic genius? Or would his worries be realized as the floodwaters rose, impinging on his home? The man of the house would have to steel himself for the worst. Wagner inspected his home and, to his relief, found that the aqua dam had done its job. This amazing invention had kept the water from the freak flood at bay, blocking him, his family, and his beloved home from harm. I think God had a hand in it. He put me on the right website at the right time and gave me the warning that I needed to act," he would later explain. While other families in the county bore some grim fallout from the storm, Wagner and his clan were spared, and apparently so were their possessions. Meanwhile, their neighbors faced the challenge of fixing all the damage that had occurred, and by the looks of it, there was quite a lot. Homes were cleared out in their thousands owing to the monster flood, yet the resourceful Texan had shelled out $8,300 for that aqua dam. Still, it was a minor expenditure compared to the $150,000 he might have needed to dole out if his house had been flooded. It also saved him and his family the grief and pain of being displaced, and it taught neighbors a valuable lesson. Once the joke of the town, Wagner became the talk of the town and of the internet for his smart thinking. The crazy guy, as Wagner called himself, had been right in the end. After basically enduring snickers from other locals, he would later tell KHOU, "Today, they're really impressed with this aqua dam, but there's another moral to the story too." Wagner also now seems to really trust himself, realizing that his intuition was correct in guiding him to make the right decision to be made during that week. He also speaks glowingly of the aqua dam, having even suggested to KHOU that emergency management could use it. He added, "I remembered when Addicts Reservoir was going over Highway 6. It could have been used. Maybe next time he gets a gut feeling, then others will take heed." Check out these other videos from Let Me Know. If you haven't made the move to subscribe to our channel, all you need to do is click on that red subscribe button. Thank you for watching.